How does the NBA's #1 draft pick go from this to this before he even starts his career? The answer is thoracic outlet syndrome, which is insane pain in your shoulder and your arm anytime you use it. And today, I'm not only going to be talking about how Markelle Fultz most likely developed thoracic outlet syndrome, I'm also going to explain why no one was able to find it and what I would have done to help him fix it if I had the chance to work with him. And the first clue we have is the rumors of him having an accident right before he joined the NBA. And the reason why I call it a rumor is because there are conflicting stories out there, even though most of them point to him actually having an accident. And because of that, I want to entertain the idea on how you can develop TOS from an accident, even if there is no structural damage. Falling from a speeding bike and hitting the body is most likely going to damage some of the muscles, even if your bones are fine and you can walk away. And if you do damage those muscles, then it has to go through 4 different stages in order for it to fully recover. And the first stage starts with inflammation, which is when the healing begins. This is also when it kind of hurts, when it's red, maybe even when it's bruising. This happens right after the accident or falling off the bike. It then moves into the scarring phase, which you could think of as stitches in order to hold that wound together, so it can begin the next phase, which is the rebuild phase. This is when the muscles begin to rebuild itself, regrow basically, in order to replace those old and dead cells. Now the final phase is going to be the remodeling phase, and this is pretty much when those brand new tissues are trying to get stronger in order to keep up with the rest of the tissues for the average load of that muscle. So assuming that Markelle fell off his bike and landed somewhere near his shoulder, we can look at those 4 stages for some clues on how he developed TOS. And the first clue is going to be in the scarring phase, which is when the muscles are getting pulled tightly together so that damaged area can recover. Well, if this happens, it may also entrap some of those nerves and blood vessels, which then compresses on them, creating your TOS pain. On top of that, having scar tissue will limit the mobility within the muscle as well, because it's pulling everything together, which shortens the muscle. But this also means those muscles can get even tighter if you try to stretch them out, or they can squeeze even tighter if you contract the muscles with the scars on them. So if any of this is true, then having that scar tissue in the shoulder may not only be compressing on his nerves and blood vessels, but anytime he brings his arm up to shoot, then it's going to create even more contraction, even more compression, which then creates more pain. Now, another clue that we have here that leads to TOS is going to be his first diagnosis of a scapular muscle imbalance. That's pretty much when there's some muscles that control the scapula stronger than the other muscles that control the scapula, resulting in that scapula only having limited range of motion in one way and not the other. It's kind of like how there's an imbalance for a lot of you watching this who aren't subscribed. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button in order to help me fix this imbalance. Now, if you're still not sure what a muscle imbalance is, especially for the scapula, let me give you a quick example. Let's say you have the levator scapula that is short and tight from overuse. Well, if this happens, it's going to pull on that scapula upward, creating elevation. This in turn pulls on the other muscles below it, like the lower traps, for example, stretching them out, making them weak and lengthened. Now, this means that the scapula will have a stronger elevation than it does depression because it's already up there and because that lower muscle is weak and can't pull it down into depression. So in this example, you have a scapular muscle imbalance because the levator scap is pulling too hard on the scapula. Or if you're a physical therapist, you're going to see that the lower traps aren't pulling hard enough, which makes you want to strengthen those. Now, in the case of Markelle, there's actually 2 muscles within the shoulder that attach not only to the scapula, but the nerves actually run right behind them, which can create TOS pain. And those 2 muscles are going to be the pec minor and one that no one ever talks about, which is the coracobrachialis. Both of these muscles are not only located deep in the shoulder pocket, but they both also directly attach to the scapula, and your nerves run right underneath them, like I said earlier. This means if these muscles get tight, either from overuse or from an injury, they can get shorn and tight, which not only pulls on that scapula down, but can also compress on those nerves and blood vessels right behind them. And this becomes even more true when you have to constantly lift your arm up in order to shoot a basketball, for example, because the more you lift your arm up, the more those muscles contract, creating even more compression. Now, some of you may be asking, well, if this is true, then why wasn't anyone able to find this or figure this out? And for one, machines aren't really going to see this. They can't really see the difference between tight muscles and weak muscles, at least that I know of, even though they can see damages like scar tissue. And on top of that, there's also something else around the body that can create compression on those nerves and blood vessels that the MRI has a hard time seeing. And that one thing is called fascia. When you think of fascia, think of it like a tight plastic wrap that goes around your muscles, your organs, and more. And the reason why I believe this is another big problem is because not only does fascia create compression on its own, and wraps around your nerves and blood vessels, by the way, so it can create compression just like that. But also because if fascia is going to make your body feel tight, then it's also going to make it feel like someone's holding down your arms while you're trying to shoot. Now, the reason why I believe that fascia is a big player in thoracic outlet syndrome is because not only does fascia create compression, but it also helps form your posture. And if you take a look at the posture of a BMX rider, you will notice how their arms are up and their necks are down, resulting in compression in the neck and shoulders, which is pretty much everything that creates TOS pain. And again, if we take a look at Markelle's shooting before he got injured, we can see how his shoulders and his arms are able to raise above 90 degrees in order to get above the defender. But after his injury, you can see how they're pretty much limited to 90 degrees only, showing that there's some sort of tightness holding his arms down. This also explains why he's not able to shoot past threes and why he's only able to shoot fades. Because when your arms get locked at 90 degrees and you want to get more range of motion, the only thing left for you to do is arch your back, which allows you to get up higher and shoot past the defender. This is also how shoulder pain can lead to lower back pain, because if you have limited mobility in the shoulder and you want to reach something up, the only way to get that increased mobility is to arch the back. And the more arching you do in the lower back, the more wear and tear it creates, resulting in earlier pain. Now, if I had the ability to actually help Markelle out, then here are the 3 steps I will be going through in order to get him the fastest results. The first step is to release all the tight muscles and the fascia that is creating that compression. This includes muscles like the scalenes, the subclavius, the pec minor, and the coracobrachialis. And the reason why I want to start with this is because not only is massaging these different muscles going to help decompress those nerves and blood vessels instantly, or at least a lot faster, but by doing this first, everything else I'm going to do right after becomes 10 times easier. Now, I'm not going to be going into how to massage all these different muscles because I already have videos on how to do that, which I'll link in the description below. But besides massaging all those muscles I just mentioned, I'm also going to want to work on the lats, because when the lats get tight as well, which is pretty normal, they can also limit your range of motion during flexion or when you're trying to shoot a ball. And on top of that, I'm also going to be hitting the upper traps and the levator scap. Because again, if these muscles get tight, they're going to pull that scapula up, which then if I try to bring my arm up, it's going to create almost like a blocking effect to my arm, which limits my range of motion as well. Now, after I'm done massaging out all these different muscles, the next step here is going to be to restore them back to their original length, or at least as close as I can. And the way I'm going to be doing that is with stretching and mobility drills. And like I said earlier, because you just release all the tightness in those muscles and the fascia, stretching these muscles out is going to feel way easier and way more effective. And this also makes those mobility drills even more effective as well, because then they can actually move through their full ranges of motion without being pulled on tight fascia or muscles. Now, this brings us to the final stage, which is the retrain phase. And this is pretty much when we're trying to strengthen all those weaker muscles around the scapula and the shoulder. And again, the reason why I'm ending with the exercises here is because now that the muscles are all loosened up, those weaker muscles have a much easier chance to pull on the joints and get stronger. And again, if you want to learn how to do those different exercises, then I'll show you how to do that in the description below. Now, if you wanted to finally get rid of your thoracic outlet syndrome like these people here, then you need to join my 21-day TOS challenge. Inside, I'm going to be showing you how to massage the different muscles, stretch them out, and which ones to exercise, all in the correct order. And if you don't get any results in 21 days or less, then let me know and I'll give you all your money back. No questions asked. The link for that program is going to be in the description below if you want to check that out. Or if you're not ready to invest in a program and you want to learn how to kind of do this yourself, then make sure to watch the video in the top right corner where I work with another basketball player and show him how to fix his own shoulder pain.